Welcome to your Dairy Checkoff podcast from Dairy Management, Inc., where dairy checkoff leaders and farmers share real stories, strategies, and insights that grow sales and build trust for U.S. dairy. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of the Your Dairy Checkoff podcast. I'm Scott Wallin with Dairy Management Incorporated, and we have another interesting topic for you today. We're going to talk a little strategic intelligence. And with me is my colleague at Dairy Management Incorporated, Gail Legaspi-Gaull. She is the head of all things strategic intelligence and planning. Gail, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, Scott. Thanks so much for having me today.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I know we've had a lot of discussions leading up to this, and I really think the content you're going to share will really resonate well with our dairy farmers. So before I get into my questions, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So officially my title is Group EVP of Strategic Insights and Planning. But at DMI, that actually covers several really great areas of the business. And I have the privilege of supporting some amazing people. So in addition to strategic intelligence, I cover international partnerships, strategic planning and measurement, and then federation relations.
I'm not going to lie. When I first heard at DMI, the strategic intelligence department, I thought this is like something out of the military or a spy novel or something like that. And but obviously that's so far from the truth. Let's start with the definition of what strategic intelligence means for us in the dairy industry.
Well, it's funny actually that you mentioned the military or the CIA. Intelligence is intelligence, right? It's looking for information. And we tend to think in sets of threes. So we look at the past, the present, and the future. And we also look at what is the market or the industry doing, what are consumers doing, and what is happening beyond our industry, to help us really make sound decisions for today, tomorrow, and further out. And so if you're a farmer and you think about what kind of intelligence you look for on the farm, that could be milk price movement, yield per cow, maybe long-term weather forecasts, but use all that information to decide what to do on a daily basis, but also how to plan for the future.
Yeah, I love how you brought that back to the farm, because certainly our farmers understand that quite well. So what's been the evolution of the team? Can you just walk us through a little bit of the history of the team and exactly how many people work in strategic intelligence?
Sure. Dairy Management, Inc. has actually been really great about prioritizing insight and intelligence throughout the years. However, until about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that function was really scattered throughout the organization and was used more of an ad hoc basis. But what we did several years ago was to bring all of the strategic intelligence under one roof. And now it's a cohesive function with about 8 people.
Why does this matter to the dairy industry?
Really, I think it matters because it helps the entire dairy industry stay ahead of change. And that means instead of constantly reacting to things and being caught on their back foot, we can be proactive and look ahead and really read the road as it's happening. So think of us as being your co-pilots, whether you are in the industry, on the industry, or on the farm.
You understand and examine a lot about consumer behaviors and perceptions of dairy. What have you picked up on as it relates specifically to dairy?
The dairy industry is so fascinating, and we're a pretty well-trusted industry. But what makes it really interesting to me is how relevant we are to farms, people, families around the country. And so that means 58% of people, or maybe 56 to 58, I can't remember the exact number right now, find dairy relevant, meaning they love the products that we have and they think it's for people like them and they want to interact with us on a regular basis.
So let's talk a little bit more about how do you divide up strategic intelligence? What are some of the pillars that we really focus on?
Yep. As I mentioned, we always talk in threes. And so we have 3 key areas. The first is what we call market and channel intelligence. So that's understanding what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening at retail stores, what's happening at restaurants. So that's kind of the marketing and sales data that you can get from scanners, that you can get from sales receipts at stores and things like that. And that's really understanding what's happening in the category and in the market. And then we look at things like foresight and trends. So what's trending in social media? What's trending in popular discussion? What foresight is happening that's talking about how not just the industry will change, but how our lives will be changing in the next 3 to 10 years? And then finally, consumer intelligence. And that's getting to the nitty gritty of what every consumer is doing, whether that's how much milk they're eating, what kind of yogurt they're buying, or even how often they're going to the grocery store.
So Gail, once you have all these insights gathered up, what's kind of the next step? How are they used and who has access to it?
Thankfully, everyone really has access to it. Anyone in the dairy industry, especially our farmers, our co-ops, our business partners, and then our state and regions, and even our organizations such as MilkPEP or USDEC. But really, there are several examples of how those insights are used. The first is driving national and regional communication and claims. So when we look at consumers and understand what matters to them in this day and age, what kinds of claims and concerns do they have on their minds, we use that information to then feed to our communications folks, both again nationally and regionally, to use in their advertising, to use in their social media posts, and really anytime that they're talking about any dairy industry product. We also use the information to drive R&D and product innovation. So understanding the consumers, looking at what's selling in the marketplace, we can then help our scientists figure out what dig areas they should be looking at. And then also our product innovation team. That's how we realized how important, for example, protein is, especially around the growth and development of young people. So that's kids in grade school, kids in high school, and not just for physical growth and development, but also for mental development as well. And then finally, we drive business decisions for our partners. An example of that is when we did some research in Japan with their consumers about cheese to see what attitudes, perceptions, and usage they have around cheese. And then that information has been now used by one of our partners to decide their product mix. Things like new formats and new flavors are being driven by that research.
Yeah, that's so fascinating that what you're learning there in Rosemont, Illinois can impact what we're doing, internationally. And, we have our partnerships overseas with Domino's and Pizza Hut, and then obviously all the work we do through the U.S. Dairy Export Council. So it's great to see that this thing has, tentacles far and wide.
Exactly. It's really exciting to actually see how the research that we have from our team then gets played out in the real world.
If you were before a group of farmers and you wanted them to really understand, one or two takeaways about the work you and your team lead, what are the things you most want to rise to the top for farmers to understand about strategic intelligence?
It's hard to focus on one thing, but I would love for farmers to remember from this that what we do means that they can focus on the things that are happening at the farm and really care about the production of their milk and their cows and all of that wonderful things. But what happens for us then is we build the understanding so that Checkoff can figure out the right kind of demand for those milk products, both now and in the future. So it's about making sure that decisions are made today on behalf of our farmers that set up the industry to succeed 3, 5, even 10 years out.
If there are farmers or anybody across the dairy value chain listening to this and they wanted to learn more information or get in contact with you or your team, what's some of the best ways they can use to reach you?
The easiest way is to email us at strategic.intelligence@dairy.org. But I also highly encourage anyone, farmers, Checkoff folks, to feel free to actually reach out to me directly. It's a long email address, so we'll just put it up on screen.
Gail, I really enjoyed the discussion today, and thank you so much for sharing more about your team's work.
Thank you so much. And I thank the farmers for giving us the opportunity to do work that we really love on your behalf.
Thanks for listening to Your Dairy Checkoff podcast. Want to hear more about how your Checkoff is making every drop count? Head over to dairycheckoff.com or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.